And President Trump is pressing forward with his national emergency declaration to divert military construction funding to build a wall on the southern border. But now some Republicans are joining Democrats in a congressional effort to try to block that emergency declaration. Kentucky Senator Rand Paul, a Republican, has announced on FoxNews.com that he opposes the president's declaration. He'll support that measure to try to block it, saying, quote, "I would literally lose my political soul if I decided to treat President Trump different than President Obama. Without question, the president's order for more wall money contradicts the will of Congress and will, in all likelihood, be struck down by the Supreme Court. In fact, I think the president's own picks to the Supreme Court may rebuke him on this." Republicans have also warned that President Trump's declaration would set a precedent for a future Democratic precedent to declare a national emergency to address climate change or gun violence. This weekend at CPAC, the president also addressed that.
A lot of people talk about precedent, that if we do this, the Democrats will use national emergency powers for something that we don't want. They're going to do that anyway, folks. The best way to stop that is to make sure that I win the election. That's the best way to stop that.
Last week, the House passed a resolution to block the president's national emergency. The Senate has to vote on it. That's upcoming in the next few weeks. That's expected. The president has said that he will veto it if it reaches his desk. Bill, back to you.
Thank you, Rich. Rich Edson for the White House. Appreciate that.
Ben Smith is an editor-in-chief, the editor-in-chief of BuzzFeed News. He was game enough to join us tonight, and obviously we're grateful for that. Not his first time on the show, but I'm thankful that you came. So, Ben, let me just ask you first about the dossier. This really is a sincere question. So you published a dossier. You and I have debated whether or not that was a wise move or an ethical move, but you did. Then we learn in the testimony, and I don't think anyone would doubt it, that Cohen did not, in fact, go to Prague. Now, we only believe that he did go to Prague because you ran the story. But you never ran a follow-up story informing your readers of that. Why?
You know, that's just totally false, Tucker. Within I think weeks of publishing the dossier, obviously we were reaching out to Cohen, and Cohen graciously allowed us to photocopy the inside of his passport. And,
I remember the story.
And we published a very detailed account of his denial that he had gone to Prague, and, and showing every bit of evidence we could get.
But I know, I just read that story. Hold on, I just read that story about 20 minutes ago, so it's very fresh.
I don't totally understand why you're saying that we haven't published a story saying Cohen said he didn't go to Prague.
Let me explain.
He's been saying consistently that he didn't go to Prague.
No, I just read the story that you published. It does not say, because you didn't have evidence of the fact conclusively, that he didn't go to Prague. Last week, we have him under oath with no motive for lying, saying conclusively that he didn't go to Prague. That's one of the headlines out of those hearings. How could it not be? And yet you ignored it. Since you're the one who published the dossier in the first place, don't you have an obligation to kind of tie a bow in the story and tell us what happened in the end?
You know, I mean, I guess we don't see tying bows as our primary obligation. We did cover the hell out of that, and particularly that aspect, from sending reporters to Prague to writing Michael Cohen's repeated denials of this.
But now we know for a fact that it didn't. So in other words, if I read a story
I guess I'm surprised that you think Cohen's latest statement makes it more of a fact than his previous statements.
Well, I added
it certainly wasn't a new development that he denied
to
it.
what we know, that we finally get to ask Michael Cohen in public, and he has every reason to tell us that, yes, he went to Prague, and that, yes, everything you think about Trump is true, because we all hate Trump in media world. He hates Trump, too. Now he can tell us the truth. And instead he tells us the opposite, that no, he didn't go. But that's not all. The dossier also claimed that poor Carter Page, whose life has been destroyed because of the salacious nonsense in that dossier, that he received $11 billion from a Russian energy company in a deal. Now, he didn't, but I don't think BuzzFeed's ever told us that. Why not?
So we published the dossier at the time, as we talked about then, not because we had been able to stand up or knock down every allegation. In fact, we said, unverified document, and an extremely important document, public document at the heart of an FBI investigation. I actually, you know, when we talked about this last time, I got the sense you basically agreed with that, and certainly the idea that Devin Nunes would have been able to press his case against the Mueller against the Russian investigation while saying there is this secret document, you know, it really makes my case, but you're not allowed to see it, that you would have been able to make the arguments you've made about Christopher Steele, about these documents, and the people on the other side would have all the while saying, but this document will scald your eyes out if you look at it, so only we the elect, we journalists, can look at it.
I get it.
I mean, that's why we published it. You understand why we published it. I don't understand why you're saying this.
I said it at the time. I think that's not a crazy argument to make that you made, and I am instinctively in favor of openness. But you're a journalist, not simply a guy who runs a platform. You're not running Medium here or Google. You're running a news site. And so you inject these claims into the public sphere, and then you don't follow up. So if I run a piece by one of your neighbors saying, you know, Ben shot somebody, don't I kind of have an obligation when you get acquitted of the crime to write a story on that? I think I do. And you did, but you didn't. Why didn't you?
There are a lot of claims there. We've invested a lot of energy in running the ones down that we could. Some of them are very, very hard to confirm or knock down. Discussions between Vladimir Putin and his aides. Cohen's was pretty straightforward. We put a lot, and I think that's a great example.
Carter Page's. Well, but hold on. Carter Page's life was destroyed by this. He can't get a job. He's considered a Russian spy or a villain. He's never been charged with anything. And your dossier that you ran has added, I think, a lot to the perception that he is a disloyal American. We now know he didn't take $11 billion in a Russian energy company. That's untrue. And you've spent all this time trying to talk about, you know, whatever, the Trump Tower, like who cares, in Moscow. And this guy lives with this claim against his name, and you haven't corrected it.
We've reported extensively on Carter Page, on his contact with Russian intelligence back in the day, on his denials. We've talked to him repeatedly. He was at my office at several months ago at a reception. I mean, I don't know how Carter Page feels he's been treated by us, but certainly we have carried his side of this. But it's funny that you were dismissive before of something because it's interesting. Like a lot of what I think you're exercised about, and that your audience, I think sometimes understandably, is really exercised about, is the collusion story and the sometimes totally wild allegations about collusion. The Tower story, the story that you mentioned, the story that Michael Cohen is going to jail about lying about, the story that you feel Cohen, I think you and I probably disagree on exactly what Cohen said about it. It is not a collusion story. It's a real estate story. It is a great real estate story. Donald Trump,
I'm aware of that. No. And
can I just tell the story to your audience here that we're talking about? This is the story at the heart of this whole thing.
I want to get to.
You spent a lot of time talking about cats. Can I just talk for 2 minutes about the Trump Tower in Moscow?
I want to get to the specific claim that I made in my open, which I know you're going to want to respond to. That here you have Cohen and the Mueller investigation both debunking the so-called bombshell that you ran in January. And you're refusing to admit it has been debunked. When I just played 2 pieces of tape, Michael Cohen saying essentially what BuzzFeed said is not true, but you're claiming it is still true. On what grounds?
I mean, if this was my show, I would have extended both of those clips a little longer. The first to show Michael Cohen saying, in his way, he was telling me to lie, which I just don't think there's a lot of dispute now that Cohen is saying that he claims, you could say he was lying, you don't have to believe Michael Cohen, he claims, he believes Trump was telling him to lie. Now, when when this first went out, you guys were calling it a hoax. You were saying the central thesis was wrong.
That's not what your piece said. Your
piece said he was directed to lie.
He personally instructed him. He explicitly told him to lie.
Personally instructed him. Cohen described a meeting in person
you said he
between the people.
Told him
Let me
to
take
lie.
them one at a time. Okay. Cohen described a personal meeting with Jay Sekulow and Trump, in which, in discussing his testimony, and this is something where everyone is chasing to get more detail of this, and it's a little hard for us to argue about it in the absence of like a transcript of the meeting. This isn't Nixon. We don't have audio. The things that Trump said, that you said before, were no Russia, no deal. I mean, if that is in the context of his testimony, that is certainly personal. They're talking to each other about his testimony. Is it explicit? I think that's a reasonable argument reasonable people can have. But the idea that this has been debunked, this is a hoax, I mean, the whole story has moved to a place where we're having a much narrower dispute here, Tucker. By the way, about a story that is not about collusion, about a story that is about lying about an amazing real estate deal in Moscow.
Look, I want to say, just once again, to be totally clear, I genuinely respect your coming on to defend your reporting. Most people won't, you will. And I think you deserve a lot of credit for that. But it's the details that matter in life as in news stories.
Absolutely.
And your story said, and I'm again quoting it, he explicitly told Cohen to lie. Cohen was asked twice by 2 separate Democratic members of Congress if that was true. He had every reason to say it was true, but he said it was untrue. So why not just say, maybe parts of our story were right, but we got over our skis, we went too far, we made a claim we can't back up, and that the subject of the allegation now denies, and we admit it. Why not just say that?
See, I guess I think, as Jason said recently, that the bar now seems to be, did he say, Michael, I now instruct you to lie, and that anything short of that
But that's what your piece says. But your piece claims that. It says that he explicitly asked
what
him
Trump
to lie.
told him was, in the context of his testimony, no Russia, no deal. Again, the details of that exchange matter a lot. Exactly where he said that, exactly how he said that, matters a lot. But I think the question of whether Trump, is directing and ordering people and how he's talking about it is something everybody's kind of wrestling with right now. You saw the New York Times report that he had ordered Kelly to do something, but that they didn't know the exact words. And I do think at some point Michael Cohen, who is his trusted retainer, has worked for him for a long time, it is not, to me, totally crazy that he should be expected to be able to interpret his boss's words.
Okay. All right. Well, in any case, I appreciate your coming on tonight. Thank you.
Thanks for having me,
And
Tucker.
the door's always open to you and anyone else. Appreciate it.
Congressional Democrats, now in control, are demanding a mountain of documents on various topics in a flurry of letters sent out today to 81 individuals, agencies, and other organizations tied to President Trump. The president says he will cooperate with a greatly expanded Democratic probe into his conduct. The head of the House Judiciary Committee says it is very clear, in his mind, the president has obstructed justice. Yet, New York Congressman Jerrold Nadler says it's too soon to talk about impeachment. Republicans say this is all political, laying the groundwork for the Democrats' impeachment move. We have Fox team coverage tonight. Britt Hume has analysis of the investigations and the fallout. We begin with Chief Intelligence Correspondent Catherine Herridge and the details tonight, and there are a lot of them.
They are. Good evening, Brett. With subpoena power and the gavel, House Democrats are launching wide-ranging investigations that go far beyond Russia. House Republicans say it's not a search for the truth, but an effort to damage the president through lengthy and methodical public hearings.
I cooperate all the time with everybody. And you know the beautiful thing? No collusion. It's all a hoax.
President Trump responded to House Democrats seeking records from more than 80 people and entities in Mr. Trump's orbit, from the White House in the 2016 campaign to his businesses and family members.
We will be issuing document requests.
Justifying the broad probes into alleged corruption, obstruction, and abuse of power, the House Judiciary Committee's Democratic chairman said Special Counsel Robert Mueller's Russia focus is too narrow.
We can't depend on the Mueller investigation for this. The Mueller investigation, number one, we don't know when it's ending, despite lots of rumors. Number two, it's focused on specific crimes.
The House Minority Leader countered that the president's former personal attorney, Michael Cohen, shoulders a lot of the blame for potential legal exposure over payments to silence Stormy Daniels during the election.
If I hire an attorney to make sure I carry out the law, the attorney has a responsibility to tell me what's right and what's wrong in the process. I watched, this is if it's a finance campaign, those are fines. Those aren't impeachable in the process.
The White House press secretary confirmed receipt, quote, the counsel's office and relevant White House officials will review it and respond at the appropriate time. Congressional Republicans said the wide-ranging investigations are about 2020, and they accused Democrats of shifting the goalposts now that they believe the Russia collusion cupboard is apparently bare.
The investigation is changing, developing, right? So we've been investigating collusion and obstruction. Clearly, they've left that far behind. They've already written off Mueller.
Republicans are refocusing on the anti-Trump dossier after a Florida judge ruled that a deposition from its author, former British spy Christopher Steele, can be unsealed.
Those records are expected to reveal how the Democrat-funded opposition research came through multiple unofficial channels to the FBI in an effort to lend it credibility. The issue has already got traction in the Senate, where Republicans maintain control, Brad.
Okay, Catherine, thank you.
You're welcome.